I'm here with Eric Peterson of Praxis Capital and just want to talk about inventory today. Eric, why is inventory down in Sacramento County right now? It's about at 1.0 months, and so what's the deal with that? What's going on?
Yeah, Ryan, it's incredibly tight right now, and we're starting to see the effects of the settlement that the attorney generals. There were 26 state attorney generals across the country who actually sued together the major mortgage providers to settle what they felt were some unfair lending practices during the years of 2005 through 2008. And that settlement came out in February this year. And part of that settlement was that the banks had to work with their borrowers who were delinquent and offer things that they haven't offered in the past. Up to this point, there's been the Home Affordable Mortgage Plan, HAMP, HARP, HARP 2, a bunch of programs that hadn't really worked. And the reason they hadn't worked is because they were offering modifications to loans that really only consisted of lowering the interest rate. Well, the biggest problem for most borrowers is that they're $50,000, $100,000, $150,000 underwater.
It's not a very good deal.
Not a real good deal at all. And so what the banks would do is they'd modify these loans, and then they'd find 6 months later the guys that they modified, well, about 60 to 70% of them were back in default. Because those guys, although they liked their lower payment, they realized, I'm still $100,000 underwater. It's not helping me out much. So the new settlement, which was a $25 billion settlement, basically the banks now have to take that money and say, look, we're going to give it to these borrowers, give it to certain borrowers that meet qualifications. Some of them have to do with income, debt-to-income ratios, and then the amount that they're underwater. And we're going to lower their principal so that now the modifications stick. So what's happened is that all these people that were going through the foreclosure process before and then those homes were becoming REO, and so we had a constant supply of REO volume. That's kind of dried up. There are many fewer homes going through the REO process, going to the trustee sale. And so we don't see as much coming to market. Much of the problem's getting solved. So this big foreclosure wave that people have talked about, or the shadow inventory, things like that, that inventory was sitting out there, but now much of it's being cured, and now these borrowers are staying in their homes, and it's not getting back on the market. So that, coupled with there's no new home building for the most part. You look at permits pulled, we're at about 15% of the permits that were being pulled for new homes from the peak. So you don't have any new homes, you don't have any distressed inventory, there's not a lot of move-up buying, and so there's just not a lot trading. But the economy is starting to heal itself, and so you have a little bit of job growth, and so you have more buyers in the market for fewer houses in inventory, and that's where you're seeing those 1 month inventory stats.
Interesting, because inventory really hasn't been that low until right before the boom. It was just at about that level, and so yeah, it's pretty interesting. So you don't think there's any big, wave coming, shadow inventory?
Yeah. No, I don't. I mean, there is a significant number of borrowers still nationwide, and also in our area, since in Sacramento we're in one of the epicenters of the foreclosure mess, but there's a significant number of borrowers who are still delinquent, and the settlement isn't going to cure all of those borrowers. So a lot of that is still going to come through the pipeline and going to end up as REO. But the banks are smart. They realize that if they foreclose on all these people at once, yeah, they'd solve the problem quickly, but unfortunately then you'd flood the market with this massive amount of REO.
Like in 2008?
Exactly, like in 2008.
In Sacramento? Yeah.
And all of a sudden you see the prices start to spiral, and it affects the banks adversely, because the banks look at that and they go, well, now I've got to sell that house for $50,000 when I thought I was going to get $100 for it. That affects their balance sheet. And so as long as they meter it out at the right rate, they can get stability in the market. And I think they've found that. We're a little light right now. I imagine that they'll, push the throttle down a little bit more and allow for some more to come through. But I don't think that you're going to see this massive amount of foreclosure inventory like we did see in 08. Yeah. I think that's over, and especially you couple that with the modifications, and you're really going to see some pretty well-controlled inventory, which is good for pricing. I mean, we're starting to see pricing increases. We've seen it in some of the stuff that we're selling as much as, since the beginning of the year, probably a 3 to 6, 7% price increase.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for your perspective. Really appreciate it. And how can people contact you?
Sure, Ryan. Thanks. You can contact me and look at our firm, Praxis Capital. We've got a website, praxiscap.com. We're a private equity company. We're investing in 5 counties around the Bay Area. And you can get more information about us there at praxiscap.com.
Hey, thanks so much.
All right, Ryan.